That's great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to, I think this is the fourth installment for the fall 2024 first year experience social hour. We are happy to welcome guests from across campus. And today we have Professor Rosino, who's joining us from the sociology department here in Arts and Sciences. And really interesting talk because he is in the sociology department. And so many of us, I've heard it in my own classes. What does a sociologist do? They do everything. In my opinion, they
Yes.
do everything. But today he's going to really talk to us a little bit more about what they do, some sociological imagination, social empathy, social
Hmm.
capital, and community outreach. And maybe ways that you as a student can get involved here as well. So thank you, Dr. Rosino, for joining us today. We're so happy to have you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited. We got a couple people here. I also shared this with my students, so some of you might be in my intro class right now as well from the first year students. But one of the reasons why I really wanted to cover this topic today is because, as Dr. Cutter was saying, it actually wasn't until I entered higher education and took an introductory sociology class that I even myself, I'm a professor of sociology, that even I understood what sociology was. Um, so I want to start off by just talking a little bit about sort of my story, how I became a sociologist. I think that's an important place to start. So I grew up in a predominantly white middle class community. I had a lot of unique experiences and opportunities throughout my life, like going to a private high school because I was designated as a gifted student, and being exposed to a lot of different people as I got older, of different cultural backgrounds, people of different social class backgrounds, different religions. A lot of the students that I was sharing my school time with were second or first generation immigrants, and all of these experiences that I had growing up in kind of a homogenous environment, and then being around all these people who were very different. It actually gave me a lot of sociological questions in my head before I even knew what that even meant. I wanted to understand, how could there be so many different cultural differences, approaches to life? How is it that people who are extremely wealthy can think about things so much differently from people who are middle class or poor? Why is it that someone who's extremely wealthy might have really strong preferences about, for instance, I remember being shocked at some of my friends having strong preferences about brands of bottled water. I was like, I don't relate to this. Water comes out of the sink. So I've had these questions in my head. Why are people doing the things that they're doing? And I think a lot of you maybe consider yourselves already armchair or amateur sociologists. You really want to understand, hey, why are things like the way they are? Why are my friends and family acting this way? Why are these things going on in the world? And it wasn't until I entered into college that I started finding some sociological answers, some sociological tools. Like a lot of you, I think, are going to go through this. I'm one of those classic cases of struggling to kind of find my footing in college. I thought about journalism because I liked writing. I thought about economics, and to be honest, it was because my parents really liked the idea of me studying economics, not because I was that interested in it. I thought about psychology. But it wasn't until I sat in an intro to sociology classroom that I really felt like, okay, here's a field that's taking seriously all these questions that I have. They're coming up with answers. And it's not philosophy. They're not just sitting around thinking and making arguments. They're actually trying to measure and understand and use data. And that kind of blew my mind. Um, so immediately I kind of got the sociology bug. And through that, I had opportunities like many of you will get through your majors, especially if you major in a scientific field like sociology, to do research. So I got to do a research study where I went out and observed different college students and local residents in the town where I went to college and watched how they interacted. And that kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm actually figuring something out about how human behavior works. Always knew that I wanted to do something that helped out the community, so I got a job after that working at the American Red Cross. I was doing health and safety education. That really made me fall in love with meeting with people in a community, education, public speaking, translating research. And the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, maybe I should get my graduate degree. I never had really intended on doing that, but I thought it would give me even further opportunities. So over time, I've gained all these skills. I got my PhD. I got a lot of research experience. I've spent a lot of time working with different organizations. So I've always been interested in improving communities, working with groups of people. Um, Obviously, my job is teaching, doing research. I'm an academic sociologist. So I've published a book on drug policy. I'm also publishing a book on politics and racism later this year. But as you probably saw in the description for this, most sociologists don't have the word professor or maybe even the word sociology in their job title. And one of the things that is kind of a like best kept secret about the field of sociology is just how many potential things it can set you up to do and to do very well. How many important skills you gain from this field, where you don't have to become a professor, obviously, or even get a graduate degree to find ways to use these kind of skills. So one of the things that I think sociology offers that not all other fields can do is that it's focused on the big picture. It offers a holistic perspective. We're talking about looking at what's going on in the social world, the social environment, asking big questions like why do people behave certain ways in certain settings in certain environments? Or even asking, how is our society set up? How are different things arranging opportunities and resources? So it helps us better understand and improve communities, institutions, and people's lives. It's not just focused on individuals. It's not even just focused on one particular area. You might specialize or find something you care deeply about, but it allows you to really look at the big picture, and then you can connect that big picture with the small picture. How does this relate to everyday life? It could be academic by like me, could be public sociology, which means that you're really focused on um, advocating for certain policies or making changes, and you're very much a public advocate. But a lot of people are working directly in communities to solve problems. They're using these skills to improve people's lives. It's a little bit more normal and a little bit more quiet. And I think that's kind of the story that I wanted to make sure all of you have a sense of when you're thinking about what classes to take, thinking about your major. So I want to emphasize some real world skills that you can get that are just so important for the job market and so important for just being a human being and kind of just allowing you to connect more with other people. So sociology can give some analytical and critical thinking skills. We use research and data, and I think a lot of people might think about how research, data, this can all be kind of dry, kind of boring. If you take a statistics class, just in and of itself, you might struggle with learning the concepts and how all the numbers line up. But what sociologists do with data is we're not just interested in understanding some kind of mathematical formula. We want to understand real questions that are really going to impact what's going on in the world. So it's not abstract, it's actually very grounded. Every time in class when I'm presenting some data, it's always connected back to a real problem, real people's experiences. So we're using research in the service of understanding people in the world around them. And one of the ways that we do that is just by learning concepts and theories that are going to help you better understand social life and behavior. Sociology has a whole bunch of ways of trying to explain or understand why people act the way that they do. If you've ever observed someone else's behavior and you kind of struggle to understand it, why is someone acting this way? Or, why is it that people have such different perspectives than me? Sociology is actually going to give you concepts and theories that you can use to try to start understanding that. Why is it that people struggle with different issues in their lives? So it allows us to answer these complex social problems. How do you solve something like poverty or try to address its impact on individual lives without looking at the big picture and also looking at people's experiences? It also helps us think about what makes for a healthy community or a healthy environment for people to have their best possible lives. Another thing that we really emphasize is communication skills. So you're not just going to learn complex ideas or learn these research findings, but one of the things that I really emphasize is how to communicate well. If you learn all this theory and all of this data and you can't put it into practice or talk to your friends and family members, bring it into the workplace, bring it into your community and actually translate it, then, we've kind of failed you if we've educated you. So we always want to emphasize communication skills that you get. You can learn to communicate and collaborate with a number of different people, communicating with the public. If you get into, let's say, marketing or something that's more public facing, communicating with policymakers. If you want to use your research to help people form their decisions, or just working with a host of different clients in all kinds of fields. And I'll give some examples in a little bit, helping them meet their needs. And then finally, this is kind of generally what we would call sociological imagination. And when you take intro to sociology, we'll spend probably, a whole week covering this topic. But I wanted to break it down in maybe a little bit more of a straightforward way. So some of the other things you can gain are less like tangible skills and more perspective taking. So you can understand how meanings and practices differ in different communities. If you're working in a community where you're unfamiliar with the people there, their background, their way of life, if you're serving them in any capacity, sociology can absolutely help you gain a foothold in understanding why it is that their meanings, how they understand the world, what they do on a day-to-day basis, what is that grounded in, what's normal for them, and really have a deeper understanding of that, which helps in obviously a whole host of careers. Understanding people in their social context. So, seeing the connection between individual troubles and big public issues. So, how would you make the connection between an individual person who's maybe struggling with unemployment and the unemployment rate? How could you understand that? At what level do we want to intervene? How might we try to make it so people have an easier time surviving? What policies might we want to craft? It also is beneficial for just understanding yourself and your relationships with other people in a deeper way. So, one of the things I particularly enjoy about sociology is that as soon as I learn something new, as soon as I gain a new thing to talk about in the classroom, as soon as I have a great discussion with students, immediately all of those things are applicable as soon as I walk out the door. So it's a great discipline for gaining some self awareness, for gaining empathy for other people. It has really helped me, even just in conversations with people, in knowing what kind of questions to ask, knowing how to find certain answers, knowing how to give people context, but also for understanding myself, deeply understanding the choices I make in my life and why that happens. So it's also just kind of a very nourishing thing for your own sense of self and how you move about in the world. Um, and one thing I mentioned is applied sociology specifically. And applied sociology is basically where we take all those amazing skills that I just mentioned, and rather than, publishing a book or, doing some kind of big public education campaign, you work specifically with an organization, with a private company, with a community, with a group of people, a hospital, any kind of institution, and you apply this skill set. You can look at the programs that a certain organization is running and do research to see how well is it actually helping people. Can we streamline these programs? What can we learn from looking at people's experiences? You might want to look at trends in the marketplace or trends in society to help businesses or organizations better meet the needs of their clients. You might want to interview people and understand, what the experiences of people in a certain community are. This could be people with disabilities and trying to understand what could make the world more accessible to them, to understanding, let's say, a community of people who are struggling with a specific issue. If you work for a nonprofit, they want to figure out how to do that. So I wanted to show a quick video on applied sociology that'll help us get a little bit more grounding, and then we can talk about this a little bit more. So we got a few examples there of how sociologists can apply their skills in various different capacities, from farming to disasters. Um, I'm curious to hear from some of you. I would love to hear from a couple people. What are some examples of social problems or social issues that you are passionate about, that you care about?
I was really intrigued by the one that showed like the making the phones more accessible
Hmm.
to, people with certain disabilities. That was really interesting to me. But I see in the chat a lot of students are saying poverty,
Hmm.
healthcare.
Yeah, I would say education gap, poverty, healthcare. These are all really great examples. Poverty is a huge one that sociology is focused on. The wealth gap is a huge one. Poverty, especially, is something that sociology not only studies, but we try to design interventions. We just try to design programs that actually help people who are struggling with poverty. We try to craft policies that will actually help people. One of my internships that I actually did while I was in college studying for sociology was working at a food pantry for people who were food insecure. And part of what I helped them do was better develop technology so they could streamline the interview process and the intake process for taking on new clients to keep track of them. And it was a really rewarding experience because I really felt like I got to help people in the community. Um, I really like the example of addiction. I actually teach a class on drugs and society. So there's a lot of approaches to addiction in psychology or various health related fields. Sociology is looking at addiction as more of a social problem. What is it about our society, for instance, that's making rates of drug misuse go up or go down? We have to look beyond the individual. What kind of policies and what kind of practices can we do to make sure that less people die of preventable overdoses? These are all questions that we grapple with. And if you're interested in addiction, I definitely recommend taking my drugs and society class. It's fully online. It's really great. Healthcare is another amazing example. And these are examples that I actually had in the slides. So all of you are kind of scooping me a little bit. I'm excited to see that. But healthcare is another one. How do we know what patients need in terms of how to communicate best with a physician? How do we reduce bias in terms of how patients are treated? How do we understand, different communities and what they need? How do we understand not just healthcare, but health disparities, health inequalities? And even in fields like nursing, where I know there's a lot of nursing majors at Malloy, so much of the information that actually goes into the nursing field and those best practices, especially when we talk about how to help communities or how to eliminate some of these health inequities, is coming directly out of sociology. So you name it, and it involves humans and things they're struggling with. There's probably a sociology of that. And there's definitely sociologists that are out there working directly in communities in the field, trying to work on those issues specifically. So those are really great examples. Um, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. All right, let me go to the next thing. So another important aspect of this, obviously, is not just, okay, this is interesting. I could see myself doing it. I care about these things. But let's not be so naive that we don't think that we want to have jobs that are stable. We want to eat. We want to have a rent, like be able to pay rent. We want to be able to have a nice, stable life. And sociology is a background that is actually growing. So employment of sociologists is projected to grow from 7% from 2023 to 2033. This is faster than the average for all occupations. Figured I'd throw in some data in here since I'm a sociologist. And having these research skills can help you dealing with exactly these kinds of things that I'm talking about. Education and health, crime and poverty, families and population, gender, racial, and ethnic relations. And it also does lead to a very decent wage. So the average sociologist makes about $100,000, as you can see here. People who work in related fields as social scientists to varying degrees, whether that's in an organization, in a hospital, something like that, make about $90,000. The average of all occupations is about $50,000. So this is not only an opportunity to do something you care about, but to make a really good living while you're also making a change. And I've honestly have actually considered, when I was in graduate school, because there's so many of these great opportunities, I almost didn't finish, to be honest, because I really thought it would be great to have one of these applied sociology jobs. So I'm really passionate about helping students find these kinds of opportunities. So there's a lot of fields that sociology majors can get into. Human resources, because you're dealing with labor, you're dealing with occupational experiences. So you might be involved in negotiating labor disputes. You might be involved in setting policies to reduce harassment and exclusion in certain jobs. You might be involved in public service. So maybe you work for a government organization, or I'm sorry, a government branch. You know, the city of New York hires tons and tons of people with sociology backgrounds to do all kinds of things with outreach programs, helping people struggling with homelessness. People in the business field hire sociologists all the time to help them make sure that their marketing and use of their services is inclusive, and think about how many insights about human behavior and public opinion goes into business decisions. Two that we're going to focus on specifically in a second are healthcare and technology, because I think those are the ones that are really booming the most right now. But we can obviously think about policy, education. A lot of sociology majors go on to either be teachers themselves, teaching something like social sciences or social studies, but also going into fields like being higher ed administrators, guidance counselors, career counselors. Also, people with sociology backgrounds work in the criminal justice field, whether it's law enforcement, but also in terms of advocating for victims, helping craft criminal justice policies. But I want to just look at healthcare and tech as examples. And obviously, I'm happy to have conversations if you're interested after this, if you want to stop by my office hours or chat. But let's look at the healthcare field, for instance. So, sociologists use their research skills. Think about how much research goes into understanding the needs of patients, understanding how to interact with them. Substantive knowledge, there's a whole field of the sociology of health and illness. My colleague, Rebecca Herrera Sands, actually does work in medical sociology. She teaches classes on health and society and looks at all of these different things. So there's so much knowledge being produced by sociologists about what makes us healthy, what makes us unhealthy, how do our social environments contribute to that, as well as teaching and learning skills. So a lot of education and training for people in the healthcare field is actually done by people with sociological background. And some of you might not know this, but sociology is actually a field on the MCAT test that people going into the medical field are expected to know. So we might try to understand patient experiences and satisfactions. We might use statistical software developed by sociologists to track health trends. So maybe you want to work in the CDC and look at overall behavioral health and public health issues. Maybe you want to communicate with the health about the healthcare needs to veterans or immigrant communities or religious communities that might have specific needs. One example that I think is really fascinating that has come out pretty recently is that sociological research into bias among healthcare practitioners. These sociologists actually set up an experiment to see how healthcare practitioners respond to video footage of a very painful procedure taking place. I think it was like a needle piercing a human skin. And what they did was they changed the skin color of the person who was in that video. And through that, they were able to identify that a lot of healthcare practitioners are underestimating the amount of pain that people of color or people with darker skin tones experience. But it wasn't just that they did that research. Where it was applied is that now this has gone into nationwide programs that are used in medical schools and medical training to try to eliminate bias. So that's the kind of way that this research and this knowledge can really be translated into transforming healthcare practice. My wife actually works in the bioethics, medical ethics field, and she has a background in sociology. So she helps work with people at Columbia, at the hospital at Columbia University, and helping them to determine different policies around ethics. A lot of times, Healthcare draws on ethnographic studies, where you just study a group of people over a long period of time and try to understand their unique challenges. So that's a lot of how sociological skills are used in the healthcare field. But let's also talk about the tech field. We're using devices and services right now that sociologists have played a really big role in making them work a lot better. So sociologists often work in UX, which is user experience, or UI, which is user interface research. This basically is working on the human side of technology. If we can develop this really amazing, innovative technology that has the potential to make people's lives better and easier, but we're not making it in a way that people know how to use it. It's not accessible. It doesn't make sense for how everyday people think and how they act. Then it kind of isn't really going to have that benefit of improving our lives. So, where sociology comes in is we can design and analyze surveys. What are the things people actually want to do with a piece of technology? What are the things that they actually want? What's going to make their lives easier? You can use qualitative research where you're interviewing people or looking at a group of people and actually observing how do they interact with different products. Maybe there's different cultural groups or different religious groups, different groups of people when it comes to their ability or their healthcare status that makes it so that they engage with technology in different ways and making sure they're not left out. You might want to study social media, how it impacts its users. So many students are interested in how social media impacts something like mental health or how it impacts healthcare practices. Sociologists do tons of research on social media. Sometimes social media companies will even hire sociologists to look at some of these issues. Understanding world events and how they intersect with technology. A lot of sociologists have worked in the AI and algorithm space as well. So making sure that the way that these new technologies are designed can be ethical and inclusive. And then one example that I think is really classic is one field of sociology is called ethnomethodology. And basically all this means is just studying people in the actual world that they live in, taking people's experiences and perspective seriously as its own thing. So, for a really long time, the people who were creating guides, like when you have a guide to use a piece of software, guide to use a copy machine, a guide to use a new printer, those were being designed by people in the computer science world. And they were filled with tons of technical information, tons of jargon, and tons of information that was just not at all accessible or useful to the average user. And so what it was doing, it was making it much more difficult for everyday people to get their heads around how to use these technologies. So it took a group of sociologists, and this is still a big, big field of practice to this day, to actually conduct research studies that was really asking, how do people actually intuitively engage with these technologies? What things do they want to do? What type of information do they need to actually have a smooth user experience? And that has actually created kind of a revolution in terms of how much we're able to integrate different types of technology into our lives. There's even a sociologist who gave a talk at Malloy a couple years ago. And I'm happy to share the link because we recorded the video, but her whole job is actually working with a rehabilitation center and other different companies and tech sort of organizations using her research on how rehabilitation works and the needs of people with physical disabilities and how they can be met by all of these technology companies. So there's so many opportunities in the tech field and in healthcare alone to help really solve people's problems. So one thing you can think about, and you already gave me so many amazing examples of this, but thinking about what you care about and training in sociology allows you to connect the community members that you care about, if there's a specific community of people you're passionate about, whether it's a social group, regional, like you really care about, the city that you're from, you want to see it flourish, or you really care about people who come from a similar background. You can connect that with a rewarding career. It doesn't have to be a hobby or something that you take up outside of that. And I'll give you two examples in a little bit of two kind of skills we can use: asset mapping and social capital. And one of the things that's really important about our program, in particular here at Malloy, is that you'll get the opportunity to complete internships. And these internships will connect you with real world experiences and professional networks. Before you even go out on the job market, you'll already have connections that you've made through these internships. People who, if you do a really good job, which I think all of our majors do at their internships, they receive a lot of support. um, that's already someone who you can have write you a letter of recommendation or connect you with other people. So we make sure that students get this real tangible experience with some of these organizations. So the reason why I have a Race, Racism, and Bethany House up right now, those are both organizations we've had students work with to provide support in terms of making sure their services are reaching the right amount of people, helping write up reports to educate the public around issues like housing disparities. Bethany House is a nonprofit that helps work with specifically women who are fleeing domestic violence. So we've had students who've conducted and designed interviews to help understand their needs and how they can better meet the needs of their clients. Um, I know people who've worked in interdisciplinary centers. So sociology, as you can see, gives you a grasp of the big picture, a lot of different methods. So I've known people who've worked, for instance, at the Institute for Collaboration in Health Intervention and Practice, which is just a way of saying we want psychologists, sociologists, medical people in the medical field, physicians, all working together on these big health problems. And they frequently hire sociologists because they understand methods, they understand different fields and different theories. I did a lot of work with this organization called Everyday Democracy in Connecticut when I was finishing my PhD, because I'm really interested in politics and civic action and who's included and who has a voice. And they do these really amazing events where they hold community conversations. They get people from a certain community in a room and they hold these sort of deliberative democracy programs. They do a lot of training for organizations for how to be more inclusive and how to give more people a voice. And a lot of the events that they've held, people have actually come out of it with a concrete plan for how to address something like food insecurity or issues with transportation in their community. So it was really an honor to work with them. But there are a lot of organizations like this that are really looking for people with these skill sets. And somebody was interested in addiction, and I believe mentioned that. Another organization I've been lucky enough to work with is the Drug Policy Alliance. And they work to inform policymakers on drug policy. So some of the recent changes in New York around cannabis laws, for instance, the Drug Policy Alliance helped craft those laws, make sure that they're tied to things like bringing money back into communities that have been the most impacted or putting money towards health and family services. So there's so many ways. And actually, one of the people that I have worked with at Drug Policy Alliance has a bachelor's degree in sociology, and she helps coordinate research in that field. So these are just some examples. And a lot of them are relating exactly to these things that I'm sure a lot of you already care about. And then once again, there's tons of programs through cities, through governments, where they want to understand how can we best help residents? How can we make sure people are getting the services that they need? How can we make sure that we're actually helping people? How can we advocate for the needs of a community? So I want to give you one thing you can use sociology for is just thinking about your job search. Even if you only take a couple sociology classes, there's some things that you can really use sociologists or you can really use sociology to do. One of them is known as asset mapping. So all of these things are probably going on in your community. There's all these opportunities. There's all these community of people. There's all of these problems and issues. all around you right now. Whether you live in the city, you live on Long Island, there's issues with housing, there's issues with addiction, there's issues with poverty. So sociology can really help you understand the community needs, but also what resources already exist in your community. So you could look into the infrastructure. What things are available to help people get to work and get home? What is the demographics? Are there certain immigrant communities? Is there a higher proportion of a certain ethnicity compared to the United States overall? That's something that we might not notice by just kind of living in an area. We might want to actually do some digging. What's the unique history of a certain place? Who are the leaders? What are some big cultural important things that go on? What are some groups and institutions that are really powerful? What's the average income? What kinds of government and political issues are going on? What political party is in power frequently? What kind of policies are passed? Um, what kind of issues are impacting people in their day-to-day lives? What are their attitudes and values? These are all extremely beneficial things that you can use sociological skills to find out. It helps you not only in terms of once you finally get your job, but one thing I definitely work with students on is just doing this asset mapping in and of itself can actually help you find a job. It can help you craft a narrative about yourself and what you want to do, which is a huge part of getting a job that we don't always teach students is like how to tell your story. Why do you care? What skills do you have? But also, this kind of knowledge really helps you demonstrate why you're a good fit. It also lets you know how many opportunities are out there. If you care about poverty, you care about healthcare, I guarantee you there are about probably between 5 to 10 organizations within your radius that you've never heard of that are working exactly on these problems. So this kind of technique, asset mapping, is really helpful for working, finding these opportunities and getting the most out of them. So that's one type of skill. And we might want to pay attention to individuals, looking at nonprofits in the area, faith-based groups and institutions, publicly funded institutions. Like I said, not only are these opportunities to find careers and find opportunities to invest in change, but it also gives you a much deeper understanding of the social world around you. Applying my sociological skill set, I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which has a really unique history, a really unique set of problems, a lot of issues with cost of living. And my knowledge and my skill set has helped me really understand that and work with people and collaborate. And then I just wanted to mention a few other things that we offer here at our department if you're at all curious. I don't have this on the slide, but we offer a couple different minors if aside from the major. So one thing we offer is the ability to build a lot of social capital. Social capital is just a way of saying that your relationships, your network is a huge resource. So my colleagues and I are more than happy to connect you with people who work in various fields. We're happy to help you make connections yourselves, give you feedback and guidance for how to find people who are doing certain things in your communities. And those basic kind of social skills for how to endear yourself and be in relationship with all kinds of different people. We give a really well-rounded base of knowledge. So not just these technical skills like how to do statistics or how to do an interview, but big concepts and theories that'll allow you to kind of interpret and understand whatever you find. And that's really helpful for getting into master's programs as well as jobs. A lot of our students will go into everything from law, education, healthcare. It sets a really good foundation for going into maybe a more specific field or pursuing a master's in sociology. And I don't know why it's loading this big amount of information at once, but I also think there's something really unique about our department and our program that you won't find necessarily in a lot of other sociology departments, which is we are a pretty small department. There's 3 professors. We have, it's not a department with a huge amount of majors. And because of that, we offer tons and tons of hands-on mentorship and advisement. I know a lot of the reason why students love Malloy is because they get a lot of attention from professors. The classrooms are smaller. And we have that to offer in terms of our department as well. So I personally know all of my advisees. I know what they're interested in. I know what classes they need to take. I know what steps they need to go through. I meet with them regularly. I talk to them when I see them on campus. They stop by my office hours. I'm happy to advocate for them in any kind of way. And, as much as other departments might have a little more infrastructure or more professors, it is really unique that we can offer that really hands-on work with students. And I really personally love one of the things I'm passionate about is helping students find opportunities in careers. There's a lot of hidden kind of information or things that are kind of not easy to fully understand about applying for jobs. How do you tell your story? How do you look for opportunities? How do you gain letters of recommendation? How do you make a good impression? All that kind of stuff are all things that a lot of us learn the hard way that I really want to make it clear and obvious how to do that. So if you're at all interested in going in any one of these fields, I'm definitely happy to sit down and talk to you about that. I also know that sometimes thinking about your career this early on is a little anxiety inducing. So I'm also happy to help students just kind of think through, and we offer classes that cover a range of things: gender, race, social class, if you're interested in any of those social groupings or identities, research methods, obviously, and not just learning like basic statistics, but learning why we're doing certain things with statistics, how we interpret it, how it makes sense. You know, when we're talking about everything from sports statistics to political polling, we're going to have a better understanding of how to make sense of those numbers. We give you big theories and ideas. So I teach the theory classes. So we go through the foundations and the contemporary theories. So big ideas, how to make sense of why do people do what they do, what motivates human action, why do we have certain problems, and how do we want to solve it. Those are some of the most fun and robust conversations that I have, is when we're able to just talk about theories and different explanations. And then depending on what you care about, we have classes on the environment, we have classes on health and healthcare, media. I mentioned my class on drugs and society, public policy. I also teach a class on pop culture and intersectionality. If you're interested in that, we talk a lot about algorithms and social media and representation. We have classes on education. We have classes on families. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend taking an intro class and get your feet wet in the field. And I just am really looking forward to any interest or conversations that you might have. Um, I also want to give a quick shout out for a class I'm teaching in the spring. So if you specifically want to take a class with me, this is a hybrid class. If you're interested in politics and how it relates to society, we're going to be taking a much different perspective than you would in a political science class. So this politics and society class is a hybrid course. It only meets once a week on Tuesdays. This is actually my first time teaching it, and I really want to attract students who are deeply passionate about understanding these issues. So how do we form our identities in relation to political parties? How does our media use shape our politics? What determines whether or not we participate in elections? What are the rules of the political process? And how do these big political decisions we're making, how do they impact all these problems that all of you mentioned being passionate about? Political decisions are impacting healthcare, they're impacting the poverty rate, they're impacting the quality of the education system. So if you find yourself being curious about that and you want to have conversations about politics that aren't just arguments about which politician you like more than the other, but actually delving into all the process, all of the things about what do we want the system to look like, this is a really great opportunity for that. And then finally, feel free to email me. Let me know if there's any issues you're passionate about. Let me know if you have any questions about connecting with resources and efforts on campus, to the broader community. If you have any questions about skills or opportunities. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I guess we have a couple minutes. If anyone has any questions for me about anything, uh, I just mentioned.
Yeah, that was great. That was excellent.
Thank you.
And then just kind of thinking, as we're getting into registration and students need to take a sociology course, would a lot of those courses be considered as part of their general education? Um,
Yes.
okay, great.
We actually we are the one field that's actually growing which classes count as general education,
Okay.
because I think we were a little bit conservative about that.
All
But
right. Well,
yeah,
that's great.
a lot of our classes, intro, family, social psychology, a couple other ones. But yeah, a lot of them apply as a gen ed. A lot of them are really helpful electives. Um, yeah, and definitely I know for certain fields like intro to sociology or some other 100 level class is required. So if you're in nursing, I'll definitely see you in intro or some other class. But yeah, that's a
Dr.
really good point.
Rosino.
Yeah,
Dr. Rosino, where is your office located and
sure.
when are your office hours for the students?
That's a great question. My office is in 312 Kellenberg. And if you walk in, my office is actually like to the right. There's three offices because we have three faculty members. Mine's to the right. My office hours are Tuesday and Wednesday, 12:30 to 1:30. But I'm also happy to meet like via Zoom. I'm usually on campus Thursday afternoons too. So I'm pretty flexible if that doesn't work out. But you can pretty much guarantee I'll probably be eating lunch and working on something, talking to students. So that's probably the best time to pop in. Yeah.
Great. That's helpful.
Mhm.
Any other students have questions for Dr. Rosino?
I'm happy to answer questions about like classes too, if you're thinking about what you want to register for. Thank you.
Dr. Rosino, you mentioned that you were teaching a hybrid class
Hmm.
this coming semester. Can
Yeah.
you give the students the number to that class, where they
Sure.
can locate it?
The course number is it's Sociology 2010. Um, so yeah, so that's politics and society. It'll have some online discussions, but we'll also meet in person. I really like teaching those kind of classes hybrid. It probably works out for a lot of your schedules as well. Yeah.
And if they haven't taken an intro course, they'd still be comfortable signing up for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. It's going to be very accessible. I'm definitely going to cover the bases and give the refresher before we get into any of the nitty-gritty stuff. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. And then just before we log off, I do want to give away our Starbucks gift card, which unfortunately cannot be used at our Starbucks here on
Oh.
campus. There's plenty others to choose from nearby. So Dr. Rosino, I think we had 11, but now
Mhm.
we have, so a number from 1 to 8, please.
3.
3. Oh, it actually is you though, Matt Blair. So that's for you.
Wow. Thank
Matt,
you.
Matt Blair, you are the winner of our Starbucks coffee gift card. You can pick up the gift card in the first year office, which is located in Siena 106. I will put it in the chat. There's generally someone here from 8:30 in the morning till 5 p.m. So just stop by whenever you get a chance and we will have that gift card for you.
Congrats, Matt.
Yes.
And also, I guess good reminder to stick around till the end.
Yes. I think most people did. I think we only lost one student. So
Nice.
that's great. So thank you again for joining
Thanks so
us.
much. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
everyone check in. Maybe if you want to just pop your email in the chat. So if you do have any
Absolutely.
questions after we log off today, or you can always email the first year experience and we can help you out there too. But have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone. Look forward to seeing you in some of my classes, and feel free to reach out. Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks a lot.
absolutely. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Take care.